There are so many hot topics for debate when it comes to issues in the United States. A large issue that the government and the people of the U.S. have been focusing on for a long time now is the death penalty. It is old but still relevant to this day. It is relevant to the point where there is another proposition approaching the death penalty in this 2016 presidential election. This argument between whether or not we should have the death penalty in the United States needs to stop. The obvious, most logical decision would to be keeping it legal here in all states. There are several reasons, both moral and logical, why the death penalty should be legal. The first major arguments that are pro-death penalty include the moral and justice side of things. If a person commits violent, heinous crimes such as murder, they should be punished more harshly. As said in the article written by Edward Fieser, Ph.D., to sentence killers like those to less than death would fail to do justice because the penalty, presumably a long period in prison, would be grossly disproportionate to the heinousness of the crime. Prosecutors, jurors, and the loved ones of murder victims understand this essential point. Saying this, Fieser is telling the audience that if a person commits a violent, horrible, and heinous crime, then justice should be served and they should receive the punishment that is right for them, the death penalty. Getting more specific on the serving justice part for loved ones of the victim of the crime, by looking at several people's real experience shows us how the death penalty does bring justice to some of those loved ones. One example of the death penalty showing justice to loved ones is shown on a whole website dedicated to people who are pro-death penalty because of the experiences they have been through. One example is a 21-year-old woman whose father was murdered who said on this website, "My dad wasn't there for me when I turned 21 last month. He's not going to be there when I graduate from college. He's not going to be there when I get married, and I won't have been satisfied with life imprisonment." This woman lives in Texas where they did not have the death penalty at the time. And she said, "I'm sorry, I don't care if Texas had it or not. I would not be satisfied because he, the murderer, can still live." Because her state did not have the death penalty, the justice she deserved was not served, and now she has a difficult time going on knowing the person who killed her father is still alive. Going through everyone's experiences with the death penalty can show you it clearly brings justice to most loved ones of victims. Now moving on to the opposing side of the death penalty and the reasons why it should not be legal. A couple of the reasons making the opposing side believe the death penalty should be illegal in the United States includes that it is not constitutional and it is cruel and unusual punishment. These arguments can easily be shut down by the pro-death penalty side. People say it is against the Eighth Amendment because it is cruel and unusual, but the Fifth Amendment states no person shall be held to answer for a capital crime unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, and that no person shall be deprived of life without due process of law. Now it says that no person shall be deprived of life, but right after that it states without due process of law. So a person or government can take a life of a criminal if it goes under and through with the law. It is clear that the death penalty is constitutional. Addressing the cruel and unusual part, yes, it may be cruel to take a life, but it isn't unusual considering that they committed a horrible crime against the public, and it is what they deserve. Cruel or not, if someone murders and rapes a child, it is the least they deserve for what they have done. The death penalty is constitutional and totally fair and appropriate. Showing and addressing only a few reasons why the death penalty should be legal across the U.S., it can easily be seen why most people are for the death penalty. It brings justice, it is moral, and it is constitutional. Looking further into these, it is obvious why the death penalty should be legal and this issue should not be addressed again. The death penalty is good and it is what we need, so we should keep it throughout our country. The next clips are interviews with a couple of people and their opinions on this debate.
After the questions I just asked you, what's your final opinion?
I believe that the death penalty should be legal and not questioned because it brings us justice and we just need to make a final decision about it.
After the questions I just asked you, what's your opinion on the whole subject?
I think that the death penalty should remain legal and constitutional in all 50 states because in all 50 states there are some people who just deserve to die. Awful people, child rapists, child murderers. There are just some people who just do not deserve to have life, that have done such awful things. Like, for instance, if the guy who committed the Las Vegas shooting was still alive, would we not give him the death penalty? Would we instead stick him in jail for 40 years, 50 years, or life in prison, and then literally give our tax money to keep him alive and support him? No, I think that would be absolutely ridiculous. And some people argue that it's unconstitutional because it violates the cruel and unusual amendment. But I think it's more cruel and unusual with the current system we have, which is where we put people on death row, and then they stay on death row for 20, 30 years, and they're literally just waiting there to die. Like, I think that's more torturous than just, giving them a shot and they're dead. I just think that we shouldn't be paying for these awful people to stay alive, and these awful people should be put down. It sounds really awful, but when you weigh a lot of the crimes that people get put on death row for, I mean, people have done some really awful stuff, and they should not be allowed to still be in prison and still eat away our money and exist.
Thank you.